Welcome to Governance Minutes, brought to you by the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals, and Knowledge Partner host, Corporate Board Member, along with contributor Thomson Reuters.
Hello, welcome to Governance Minutes. My name is Ken Bertsch, and with me today is Heidi Welsh, Executive Director of the Sustainable Investments Institute. We're going to talk about environmental and social proposals and get an idea of what's happening this year, what the trends are, and what companies should do when they receive a proposal. So Heidi, can you give a little bit of background first on the Institute?
Yeah, so we were started in 2010, and our job is very simple. It's to find out what all the shareholder proponents who are proposing resolutions on social and environmental issues are doing, why they're doing it, and then how companies are responding to that. It's similar to proxy advisory firms in that we cover much of the same territory, but we don't make recommendations. And we're supported by a sort of core group of the biggest college and university endowments and some of the biggest pension funds.
Okay, so you're doing a proxy report that helps them vote, right, on specific proposals.
Yeah, but it's a research report as opposed to here's the conclusion and then here's the supporting evidence.
Okay.
It's more here's the supporting evidence and you're smart enough to figure out how you're going to vote.
Okay, and you do a preview of the season, what's coming up, right? A lengthy preview and a document and a webinar, I think.
Yes, we do. We do one for our subscribers that comes out a little bit earlier, and then we've put it together in a collaboration with the As You Sow Foundation and Proxy Impact, an advisory firm. And on March 7th, we're going to be having a webinar, which will have a lot more detail on everything we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Well, so not to steal the thunder, but
Sorry.
can you give an overview of what you're seeing for the season?
Yeah, well, you have a sneak peek here.
Yeah, okay.
So we are looking and tracking at this point, and this is just the social and environmental issues, not the sort of pure governance matters. We're looking at this point at about 365 filings, which is a little bit up from last year at this point. I'm not sure the ultimate number will probably be close to 400 like it's been for the last several years, but that's what we're looking at right now. And pending right now we have about 260 shareholder resolutions on these issues, very similar to last year at this time. To the biggest companies, we have about 40 that have been withdrawn, mostly after agreements. That's going to increase a lot. I would expect maybe another 80, depending. And then there's been some action at the SEC that's knocked them out.
Okay. So a lot of the proposals are withdrawn. Is that been a trend for increasing withdrawals over the years? Yeah,
I mean, the number of resolutions filed now is about twice what it was 10 years ago, but the number of withdrawals has actually increased proportionally somewhat. So even though the number that companies have to deal with is more, a lot of it doesn't get into the proxy statement.
Okay, okay, good. And I want to come back around to what the investors who propose these resolutions are getting when proposals are withdrawn. But first, can we break it down a little bit into types of issues, different topic matters? Yeah,
so the big story is the same one that it was last year, which is political spending. And last year, and for the last several years it's been that, there was a bit more on lobbying last year, and that has increased further this year, which sort of makes sense post-election. It was, what are you doing to influence the election before, and now it's what's happening after the election. So that makes a lot of sense intuitively. So that's about a third.
Okay.
And then sort of climate and energy resolutions make up about well, climate, energy, and sustainability reporting make up about another 38% of it.
Okay.
And then about 20% have to do with sort of diversity, both board diversity as well as employment diversity. Most of that's sexual orientation policies.
Okay, okay, good. So we've, in this program, focused a bit on the political contribution, so we'll probably direct this conversation on other topics. And, before we get into that, who are the proponents?
Well, it's a diverse mix. I mean, there are quite a few. We broke it down by primary filer. That's how we track it. So about 30% are coming from socially responsible investment firms. About a quarter are coming from pension funds, the sort of known actors. The New York State Common Retirement Fund, New York City, CalSTRS has some. Faith-based, many affiliated with the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, which your members will be very familiar with. That's about 18%, and then unions and foundations have about 7 or 8% each.
Okay, and some individuals, or?
There are some individuals, but and more than in the past, but it's pretty institutional.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about climate and energy proposals. What are the issues, and how are people negotiating over them?
Well, I think the question, the real focus here is disclose more, and not only disclose more, but disclose specifically metrics. Tell us what you're doing, what your goals are. I think the proponents are looking for evidence, not just aspirational statements.
Okay.
And so on climate change, it's more energy efficiency now. Also, some new angles on adaptation to climate change. Whatever you think about the cause, companies are having to deal in their operations and through their supply chains with drought, water, lots of things that really affect their operations. So people are asking, what are the risks associated with those?
So are these resolutions getting a little more specific to the company and asking for particular kinds of disclosure?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing some things on flaring, for instance, and that would be to companies that have flaring.
Right.
But you're also seeing some things that that push this into sort of the financial sector a bit further. There's an interesting no action letter that just got released. It hasn't been released publicly yet, but it's been talked about at PNC Financial, which is asking them to consider climate change in their lending activities.
Right.
That's a policy switch to say that that's not ordinary business.
Okay, so it will be in the proxy unless it's negotiated out.
That's right, and I would expect further resolutions along those lines in the future.
Okay, and a few other banks have them as well, I think, don't they?
Yeah, J.P. Morgan has it as well.
Okay.
Those are the only two on that.
Okay, and then people talk about proposing resolutions at mid-cap companies and maybe even small caps, but we haven't seen a lot of that in the past. Are we seeing more? And what I think that can take companies by surprise. The Exxon Mobils of the world are used to getting these, but smaller companies may be surprised. What should they do when they get one?
Well, I think when companies get a shareholder resolution, I mean, it's easy to think, oh my God, what do I do now?
Right.
But I think you talk to the proponent, find out what they're saying. Really, shareholder resolutions are a good way to find out in a very sort of structured fashion some of the sort of critiques, possibly some of the critical issues that companies are going to have to deal with. So it's a good opportunity, I would say, to see what the big issues are going to be that you're probably going to have to deal with anyway. Okay,
so for the company itself, you should see it as an opportunity, and we have a number of members who say this: it never hurts to make the phone call, try to make a contact, and sometimes it won't be productive, often it will.
Yeah, and I think as the statistics show, proponents are very willing to negotiate. They're not. There are some folks that like to grandstand, but there are these are serious people that are interested in sort of structural change, and some of this is change that's already happening anyway. So.
Okay, good. Wanted to ask you a little bit about a different trend that may relate to the shareholder proposals, maybe not, but we've seen talk of divestment on various subjects, including relating to greenhouse gas emissions. And is this South Africa again, when there was this huge divestment movement? What's happening?
Well, so that South Africa has been invoked. I think structurally it's different. That was about changing sort of political system in South Africa. And this is about sort of critiquing a whole industry and remaking how our economy works. So it's a somewhat taller order, and it's being received with some skepticism by some big social investment firms and beyond social investment firms by a lot of others. But I don't think it should be written off. Students are always on the cutting edge of things, and they could change the dynamics of the debate nationally, and college and university endowments are really connected in with a lot of the sort of financial.
Okay, so it can impact your clients and how they're looking at these issues.
Yeah, and I mean, watch that space.
Yeah,
Harvard just is going to hire a VP for sustainable investment, Harvard Management. That's new and interesting.
Okay, that's good. And can we talk a little bit about maybe non-environmental issues or beyond the environment? So political contributions, as I said, we've talked about a lot. What are the other kinds of issues more specifically? Human rights sometimes comes up?
Human rights comes up. The new Ruggie principles, the UN principles for business and human rights, are invoked by some of the resolutions, and they're trying to provide more specific guidance to companies when they're operating in very fraught areas and conflict zones.
Okay.
What do they do? What are their responsibilities? How do they address concerns?
Okay, is that a constructive approach in your view? The Ruggie principles, are they useful?
I mean, they came out of a multi-stakeholder process which involved companies and NGOs, and they're really trying to be practical.
Right.
Professor Ruggie has a little piece in our proxy preview book on what they are and what's happening now and looking forward, so that folks could look at that if they're interested in more.
Okay, that's good. And then just on a political topic, one thing that has come up is that's unusual is Qualcomm got a books and records request. So this is a little bit off from the shareholder proposal, but a request to inspect documents related to political contributions. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting case, and it could mean that there, could be other books and records requests and other things. Maybe the thin edge of the wedge. It was a novel approach to use that to try to sort of force disclosure of political spending.
New York State, right?
It was the New York State Common Retirement Fund sued in Delaware Chancery Court. And Qualcomm decided to disclose, and to disclose quite a lot. I think on that political spending thing, it's really a focus on the indirect spending that they don't know about so far, funding to 501c4, social welfares, and to trade associations, which I know is controversial. But just that case bears looking at because it could be a sign of more cases like that.
Okay, and that's something new this year that we haven't seen.
That is new, yes, definitely.
Okay.
The case is worth looking at. It's really interesting to read.
Okay, good. Well, thanks very much. That's a great summary, and I know you're on March 7th. You're going in more depth. So
right.
Appreciate it.
Proxypreview.org.
Okay, good. Thanks very much, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Join us again next time for Governance Minutes, brought to you by the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals, and Knowledge Partner host, Corporate Board Member, along with contributor Thomson Reuters.